Here's a suggestion for solving
the
immediate problem that we face with regards to the challenges in society. A party who prorogued Parliament illegally, a party who ignores the devolved settlement in Scotland and Wales, and a party who accepted money from a racist who called for an MP to be shot. You get rid of the Conservative Party. That's what you do.
How do you do that?
Mate, you know you've lost the argument when you, even though you have a microphone, you are being drowned out by the clapping for the other guy.
Will the Community Secretary announcement revising the definition of extremism actually prevent extremism?
So, as you say, this was announced 1 month ago today by your boss. An abbreviated version of it, let me just share it with you, is defining extremism as the promotion of an ideology based on violence, hatred or intolerance to undermine fundamental rights and the UK's liberal parliamentary democracy. Will it actually prevent extremism, Lee?
Well, we hope so, and that's why we brought it forward, because we recognise that the approach needs to change. It needs to change post the 7th of October. We've seen more extremism within the United Kingdom, but also we always need to go back and look to make sure it works, to make sure it's appropriate for today. It's a very difficult area. It's one of the reasons why it's creating so much debate. But what my boss, what Michael has said, Michael Gove, is that we need more precision in terms of when we define extremism, and then we need greater clarity from government about not engaging with those who are defined as extremists. And it's all part of a plan to try to make sure that we protect freedom of speech, which is absolutely vital. And then on the other side, you've got criminality, which absolutely people need to throw the book at. But there's a bit in the middle where we need to make sure that those people who are trying to undermine, fundamentally undermine, rule of law, democracy, the values which we all live by and we built our country over several...
Well, the third part of the changing of the definition would be anyone who creates an air of permissiveness of the previous points. So one of the parts of the new definitions, well, if you have a permissiveness of other people who have similar views, then you're also technically an extremist. And this has been deliberately phrased in this way to essentially impugn the entirety of the pro-Palestine movement, everybody on the marches. Well, if your march is creating an environment where somebody can wear the paraglider picture or whatever, the paraglider patch, then we can call your entire march extremist because it's technically permissive, and which is a really broad generalization, which of course, as only ministers get to decide this as well. So this is the criteria. If you fit that criteria entirely down to ministers, that's probably why Priti Patel and all that lot were getting very worried about this definition, because once Labour are in power, they won't do it because they're friends with Policy Exchange and all this lot. But if they've actually wanted to, if Jumbly Crumbly Concrete was still the leader and they were coming in, they said, well, actually, Policy Exchange, you're extremists.
Yeah.
Taxpayers Alliance, you're extremists. Not allowed to interact with anything state-run at all because of that kind of cordon sanitaire that gets placed around you. No more Question Time invites, no more Politics Live invites. Persona non grata. They could do that.
What the Tories are going to basically try and do is create a definition broad enough to encapsulate everything that they don't like. So trade unions, anti-Israel, pro-Palestine marchers, just stop oil, that sort of thing. But also doesn't encompass the obviously mental motherfuckers on their backbenches. And indeed their entire membership. And Nigel Farage. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's what they're going to try and do. And it's sort of an impossible circle to square. You know?
And also, on top of that, they all say things like, "Oh, well, if you don't adhere to British values," and I'm just like, "Well, what the fuck is British values? That means nothing to me."
It's ridiculous, exactly. So for some people, British values are what I would consider to be extremist.
But those are people who we need to call out, and we have to say we're not going to engage in government from.
So when you see that you need a more precise definition, I was watching the debate this afternoon, and so you had Robert Jenrick, obviously former. From the Home Office, saying, I fear the definition lands in no man's land, not going far enough to tackle the real extremists, not doing enough to protect the non-extremists. And watching the debate, who's welcoming this from your side?
Well,
I saw a lot of criticism. I didn't see many people saying this is a great idea.
It's a challenging policy area. There's no doubt about that, and that's why it's taken time to get here. But what Michael is trying to do is he's not going to run over there and not deal with it. He's absolutely trying to deal with it. What I saw actually today, I thought the Labour response was relatively constructive. I thought most of the people sat on my benches, on the Conservative benches, were...
Oh, God, they're just going to suck each other off.
I mean, that's
They're
basically
the same political party. They're just the same
That's what's
thing.
so tilting about it, that Keir Starmer's just been welcoming this shit. No criticism from the Labour benches whatsoever about this. It's really, I mean...
Well, because he's essentially been doing the same thing with purging the quote-unquote trots from the Labour Party, so why would he have a problem with it? He gets they're going to potentially pass legislation that would allow him, when he becomes inevitably Prime Minister in a few months' time, to be able to do that, but on a larger national scale.
I think with that definition of extremism, what would the Tory party say then about what Frank Hester said about Diane Abbott this week?
Well, we'd say it wouldn't be covered by that, because the whole point of this...
It wouldn't be covered by...
Saying that sitting MPs should be shot is not extremism, apparently, guys. News just in...
The action of one person means you should hate an entire societal block of people. That's not extremism. See what I mean? That's literally the point I was making. They want to define it broadly enough so that they can encompass everyone on the left, but not broad enough that they encompass basically everybody else who is their political party.
Of this issue, and I'm happy to talk about... I'm very happy to talk about Frank Hester in a moment.
It's racism, it's extremism.
But this is about organisations. And if we conflate these two things, which we can do...
He calls for an MP to be shot! What's the conflation?
This is about...
What is the conflation?
Surely, if anything undermines our liberal democracy, if anything undermines the rule of law, it's calling for sitting MPs to be executed by firing squads.
About a long-term approach to try to ensure that those organisations who sit and stand in our country, enabled through the very values which we all share, but who are trying to undermine those values, we have to say that's not appropriate, that needs calling out, it needs stopping.
And you've made that point. You say you shouldn't conflate those two things. I just point out that former Chancellor George Osborne has done that today, and he said it's interesting. I mean, I'm just quoting in that the government won't give money to extremists, doesn't want to fund extremists, but is happy to take money from someone who appears to fall under that new definition of extremism.
And again, can we just point out the fact that they're still going to sell weapons to Saudi Arabia?
And Israel!
And Israel and various other awful, disgusting governments who will enact genocide with them. But we're not going to help fund or interact with extremists.
We've got a choice as a society. We've said that what Frank Hester said was wrong and it was racist. And here, now, the debate...
Okay, so you're taking money from a racist? I'd say that's pretty extreme.
There's another 5 million coming, apparently, because the MP's donations or the party donations are only released quarterly. That's still technically not officially being signed off as being a political donation until the next quarter rolls by. But it's still, it's sitting in the account still, though. Another 5 million from Mr. Racist.
Yeah. So we're accepting money from a racist, but we don't fall under the extremism thing. No, we're fine. But everyone else is bad.
I mean, to be fair, if we're going to talk about extremism, what about all of the Tory MPs talking about cultural Marxism, the Danny Krugers and the Suella Bravermans of this world? You know, that Nazi-era conspiracy theory about Jews controlling the West.
Or they're literally wanting to break international law. I'd say it's a bit extreme.
Or even wanting to, actively having broken international law. However, it's not extreme, it's only in a limited and specific way.
The thing in front of us right now, is how we make sure over the long run, when Frank Hester isn't in the news in 6 months' time or 12 months' time, when something else has come up, when the Labour or the Liberals or the SNP have got a problem like we've had this week, ultimately we make sure that still we are stopping people misusing our values. We shouldn't be naive in this country. If we believe in liberal democracy, we have to fight for it.
Stephen.
Look, the good news is that this Conservative government is coming to an end. The bad news is that they've not realised it yet, so they're going to spend... So they're going to spend whatever time they have left seeking to divide, deflect and distract from the chaos of the last 14 years. Austerity, public services on their knees, the damage of Brexit, a Prime Minister who lied, a Prime Minister who crashed
Okay, but Stephen,
the
about
economy.
the question
No,
from Louise is, will it actually prevent extremism?
And this is an important point, because we cannot allow ourselves to fall for that distraction. We need to make sure that we do, as the good people of Liverpool have done since 1983, and the people of Scotland have done since 1955, and reject the Tories at the ballot box. And when it comes to extremism, I think someone should provide Lee and the Conservative Party with a mirror, because the only people who have threatened parliamentary democracy on these isles are the people who shut down the Westminster Parliament illegally, the people who seek to undermine the Scottish Parliament and the Welsh Parliament at every turn, and the people who accepted £10 million from someone who was racist and called for one of my parliamentary colleagues to be shot. That is extremism, and Lee needs to hold a mirror up to himself and his own party.
Not a word.
Absolutely bang on the money. I would also
Correct
add
him.
that further. Well, yeah, absolutely ruined. But I would also add the voting bill thing where they, have to have ID, the voter ID rules, which is just ripped straight from the American of how do we undermine ethnic minorities and poor people from voting. Again, if you don't believe in liberal democracy, Tories, just come out and say it, and we can put you in your own camps.
I mean, if I'll tell you what.
Any of that too.
If the Tories want to prove their commitment to liberal democracy and the will of the people, quote unquote, call election.
2 minutes about how we actually solve extremism in this country. Not a single word. Just a load of partisans.
Well, here's a suggestion for you, Lee. Here's a suggestion for solving the immediate problem that we face with regards to the challenges in society. A party who paroled Parliament illegally, a party who ignores the devolved settlement in Scotland and Wales, and a party who accepted money from a racist who called for an MP to be shot. You get rid of the Conservative Party. That's what you do.
How do you do that?
Mate, you've lost the argument when even though you have a microphone, you are being drowned out by the clapping for the other guy.
Absolutely. I wish he'd have just finished off with putting the top Conservative Party into the dustbin of history where they belong.
Yeah,
that would have also been the ultimate smackdown.
That would have been perfect. But literally, you have a microphone, and I can't hear what you are saying because the other guy got such a round of applause. At that point, you really just have to go, you know what? I think I might have lost this one. Yeah, you know what? I'll take the L and move on.
I'm not going to be distracted. I am not going to be distracted by your divisive, deflective.
Hang on. Just 1 second. Louise's question is about, will this revised definition of extremism actually
That's
prevent
Therese Coffey, don't lie.
Answer that question, Stephen.
Because
will it? No, we hear what you say about the Conservative Party, and of course you're entirely within your rights to make that point. But in answering Louise's question, will this revised definition of extremism actually prevent it?
The important point here is that this is just a deflection.
No, but answer the question. Can you answer the question? I'll give you one.
Well, ultimately, the answer would be no, because this isn't meant to solve the problem. It's just a deflection.
Well, that's exactly his point, yeah.
Does he have to spell it out to you like you're a fucking 5-year-old? Can you not do the cognitive thing yourself and actually read into what he is saying that he thinks, no, actually, this isn't meant to solve that problem. It's literally a distraction.
Well, it's meant to create more problems specifically.
Yeah, basically, yes.
One last chance.
No, I don't.
Okay, you don't answer it. Fair enough.
In terms of what the government have done today, but this is a deflection, and we can't.
Yeah, no, she did.
Melon.
She literally did need him to spell that out.
Yes. So I just want to remind you that he actually said when he looks at Diane Abbott.
This is Frank Hester you're talking about. Yeah.
It makes him hate all black women, and that she should be shot. If that is not extremism, I don't know what it is. And I'm sorry, I'm thinking about... I am also thinking about countless of black women, especially black girls, who hear that on TV, and that's a massive safeguarding issue. I mean, what this little girl will actually think, that she's not accepted in the society that we live in. I mean, I was not shocked that's how sad it is. We're getting used to that. But I was
nasty partying everyone away, mate.
Yeah.
We protect Diane Abbott at all costs, and I hope she receives support from both parties, the Conservative and the Labour Party.
She's not receiving support from any party.
What she is though, what she's getting from Labour is Labour are piggybacking off of her legacy, saying, "Oh, well, she's a trailblazer. We're going to attack the Tories over this. We're going to give the whip back now. We're going to try and railroad her into giving up her seat in response to restoring the whip," which is a very kind of weird, ultimatum that they're giving her there. And on top of that, this is an even crazier bit. On top of that, what they're doing is they're sending out emails to Labour members asking for donations like Trump style, like American Democrat style, saying, well, the Tories, they get £10 million donations from racists, and we're only a small bean political party who have to rely on individual donations, which is not only rancid because they're, again, piggybacking off of the trauma of Diane Abbott to try and prod their membership to give them more money, but they're saying that they don't get donations at the time in which the first time ever in their history they've had more in private donations from like rich people than they've had from the trade union movement.
Well, look, we should take extremism seriously in our society. Joe Cox, the MP, was murdered by a far-right extremist. David Amess was murdered by an Islamist extremist. I think we should be very worried about our young people getting radicalised. I'm from a Muslim background. No Muslim mum or dad wants to see their daughter ending up like Shamima Begum. No Christian mum or dad wants their teenage son to end up like a man called Joe Metcalfe, who's a teenager. He was sentenced to 10 years after being convicted of planning to attack a mosque and kill Muslims. So we should take it deadly seriously.
And do you, to Louise's question, do you think this will, what Michael Gove has...
Just like Al-Qaeda, they're being funded by the American government. Sorry.
Said they will actually prevent extremism and that kind of thing?
No, because I think what the government is doing is cynically playing politics with this issue. I think this idea of tackling extremism, if you're going to be serious about it, you have to engage with people, you have to understand what's happening in these communities, you have to work with people in the community. And what I have been seeing cynically over months, I'm sure you've all seen it here, is using extremism as a fig leaf actually to promote a lot of anti-Muslim and Islamophobia in this country. And I find it extraordinary that in the week that we have had these comments from this Tory donor, where the Conservative Party took a whole day to even define what racism is, they sent ministers out on the morning round saying this guy hadn't been racist, he had just been a bit rude. He talked about shooting a black woman, not any black woman as well, our first ever elected black woman in British political history. This is a party that couldn't even define that as racist. How on earth are they going to define what extremism is?
Fucking true. No, good
Why
point.
don't you tell your whips in the Lords then?
That would
to go and tell the whips in the Commons to give it back to Diane Abbott.
Yeah, it would be helpful if for the Labour Party to try and piggyback on this, if they were piggybacking on someone who was currently a Labour MP.
So the Conservative Party talks about protecting freedom of speech, all being well, but there's a big difference between freedom of speech and spreading misinformation, total garbage, total lies. As the lady said, there seems to be no repercussions or consequences to these people who make such statements. They're not corrected. The correct information is not put out there. Hence why why fascism in this country and extremism is on the rise. People are going to believe those.
Is he talking about the Tory front bench now?
We literally have somebody who got thrown out. The elected Prime Minister in 2019 got thrown out of the Commons for lying and then not correcting the record.
Yeah, look, consistently, they just make shit up all the time.
Those facts that they think are fact, and they spread through social media and have detrimental effects.
Let me just ask, in the interest of balance, is there anyone here who welcomes what Michael Gove had to say and supports what he had to say?
No one!
Scousers! Woo! We love Scousers.
Absolutely wrecked, Gove. Get in the fucking bin where you belong, mate.
Fuck off, mate. Fuck off back to London. You fucking prick.
Okay, that's. I apologise to my co-host. Just microaggressed against you all.
Not a hand up. Okay, there were other people who had it. You had your hand up there, so let's hear what you've got to say. Yes, the woman with the black polo neck.
I think I would just go one step further and say that there has been a decades-long campaign of inciting and exploiting Islamophobia.
True.
To suppress
Trojan
dissent.
horse.
A decades-long campaign on behalf of who?
I mean, in terms of the Conservatives, the amount of suppression in terms of democracy and free speech, anytime there's dissent that that's not got the approval of Whitehall, it feels as though everything's being shoved down, and that Islamophobia has always been kind of incited and exploited.
Oh God, it's like I really want somebody to bring up Trojan Horse and just call out Michael Gove specifically, because it's literally Gove who was there. It was Gove who was told by his parliamentary advisors that the Trojan Horse letter was most likely a hoax, and yet he still ran with it because he knew there was political efficacy in spreading this complete nonsense that there was this Muslim plot to take over schools. Where is the AHRC report into internal Conservative Party Islamophobia? It's nowhere, even though they are clearly institutionally Islamophobic, as we've seen from every poll survey done on those kind of internal opinions within the party. Yet when it comes to anti-Semitism, there's an EHRC report into the Labour Party, despite the fact their own internal statistics from parliamentary polling shows that the Labour have fewer anti-Semites in their ranks than the Conservative Party do. That is the absolute ridiculous bias of the way in which we talk about these things in public discourse.
It feels as though there's been a decades-long campaign that hasn't worked with Prevent. It feels as though it's not functioned particularly well.
Okay, let me take one more part. Come to you. Yes, this one in here.
With Rishi Sunak making transphobic comments in the presence of Brianna Jai's mother and accepting donor money from someone who is, I think we can all agree, is incredibly racist, will the government accept it's complicit in a culture of racism and transphobia?
True.
Right,
Very good
Transphobic
point.
hate crimes up 300%.
Yeah.
Sure. Look, there's two things here. And the Conservative Party's had a difficult week. And the first thing is that the people...
When was the last time they hadn't had a difficult
Every week
week?
they get laughed at. Sorry.
Yeah. No, it is every week they get laughed at. But when was the last time they didn't have a difficult week? The 2019
Like when
election?
Azhar Rally was... Like the Azhar Rally moment for the Labour Party, I think that's probably the last time.
No, I think they still had a shit week. It's just that Labour had a worse week.
True.
But like the last time, it was probably the 2019 election was the last time they had a good week. Basically.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah. Like they had to deal with the pandemic and Boris Johnson for the entirety of that, and then Liz Truss happened, and then Sunak happened. It's been terrible for them ever since.
Yeah, they've not had a good time. Mm.
The person who we're talking about, Frank Hester, the comments were wrong.
Is she face palming?
The comments were racist. You have to deal with the specifics. This week it's Frank Hester. A few weeks ago it was Angela Rayner about something else. Before that,
Whoa! Come on! What a ridiculous comparison. They even tried to do this in Parliament and say, well, Frank Hester might have called for a member of Parliament to be shot, but one time Angela Rayner called Tories Etonian scum, and this is basically equivalent, even though clearly the second one is completely justified in response to the first. And also, given that we all talk about racism here, but the comments were misogynistic as well. It was misogynoir. It was hating all black women specifically. To bring up Angela Rayner in a discussion over the member of your donor class who's donated £10 million to you, who's been found to be a misogynist and a racist with the comments that have been made here. And then to bring up Angela Rayner in response, given the last time there was a problem with Conservative Party misogyny, Angela Rayner was the victim. When Tory MPs were claiming that she was flashing her fanny at them.
Yes, yeah, pretty grim.
On top of all of the classism that she regularly receives throughout the media and throughout the political class entirely.
Yeah, I wonder why when she's shamed constantly for having like a regional accent and being from a working class background, I wonder why she would call you Etonian scum.
Oh, exactly. Or for being a mum at 16 or something. Like, imagine all of the shit people say about her. I mean, again, I absolutely have no respect for Angela Rayner because of her political actions and her political opinions, right? That's how I judge people, by their actions, not the background that they come from or the accent that they have, because I'm not a bigot. I just have a moral threshold which Angela Rayner doesn't cross.
Yeah.
Within politics, people say things which are incorrect. The first thing they need to do is say that was wrong. And then more broadly...
Which, by the way, Hester has not done. He said, you apologised for being a bit rude.
No, exactly, yeah.
A bit rude. I'm sorry, making violent threats towards members of Parliament isn't just a bit rude, actually. It's actually kind of illegal. The police should be investigating that shit.
As a society, we have to decide what we want to do with people who get things wrong and who say things wrong. And the question is, do we forgive? Or do we just ostracise? And some people...
Dickhead! Literally, the question is, will the government's latest definition of extremism have the desired effect? So you want to ostracise people from society in some sort of legal remedy way for saying things that you don't like. except when it's Mr. Hester, in which case you will take £10 million of his money.
People in this audience will say, that's it, we're done, no more. Other people will say, actually, second chances. My personal view, I did this all the way through, I've tried to do it all the way through my career in politics as an MP, is try to give second chances, not just on my side, but on the other side as well. I think we are better as a society, as a community, if we do that. Where comments are wrong, they should be called out. But ultimately, if we give people a second chance, if we say, actually, you still have something to contribute in whatever way, be it MPs or within the political process as a whole, I think we are better as a society for doing that.
OK, I just want to come back on that because it is a disgrace to lump other politicians like Angela Rayner in with what that race has done.
Correct, mate. I think that's what they call in the kind of Oxford debating style, Cumstead and Dumpstead. I think so. I think that's what it's referred to as.
Hang on. He didn't just make a bad comment about people. He said Diane Abbott made him want to hate all black women and he wanted to shoot her. OK, that is not just I have been a bit rude. And when you say he apologised, he did not even recognise his abhorrent, disgusting, frightening racism. He said he had just been a bit rude. He would not even accept that. And if you are going to be preaching to the country about extremism, you have to put your money literally where your mouth is. This guy is a disgusting racist. He is bankrolling the Conservative Party. Will you give that money back?
I mean, I hate to give Aisha Hazarika her plaudits, but she's absolutely right there. Although I would have butted up even harder, and then I would have actually gone back in and talked about that Angela Rayner moment with the Sharon Stone thing that they talked about before, when she was literally a victim of misogyny from another Conservative minister. How many of these mask-off moments need to have? Remember that time where James cleverly described Stockton as a shithole?
Yep, I do.
And that's just forgotten. It's just forgotten now because they just had this cavalcade of over the last 4 years. The moments that should be a resigning moment for anybody else just would get forgotten about. They're blown away in the wind.
As I have said, all the way through this, there are different MPs and there are different people in political life that make comments that are wrong. When they are,
Who has said that they're going to shoot somebody? But when have they said they're going to shoot somebody?
John McDonnell less than.
And also, let's be real. Angela Rayner's comments weren't wrong. They were literally 100% correct.
Yeah,
just correct.
So, I'm sorry, being viciously racist is not the same as accurately describing people.
Oh God, it's every time I want to be in the audience, I just want to respond and just say, well, given all that we know about the Conservative Party over the last 4 years, how can you claim that Angela Rayner calling you scum is anything other than completely correct?
Examples of really, really inappropriate behaviour, of really, really outrageous things that were said. We should say that they're wrong. We should call out that they're wrong. But as a society, we have a broader question, as I say, to answer about whether we accept when people are contrite, that they still have things to
Will you give the money back? You were asked that.
Well, I'm not in charge, but I don't think we are giving the money back, no.
You don't think
because ultimately, if we say that people ask for forgiveness, if people say they were wrong, we've said it's wrong, that he said it's wrong.
So basically 15
No,
million...
he didn't say it was wrong. He said it was rude. What you can't do is pick on her because she's a black woman and say you want to do violence against her. Apologies. That takes it to a different level. That's not the same category anymore, is it?
Pounds gives you a blank check for racism.
No,
and
of course, and that
Getting drowned out by claws, mate.
That is absolutely not correct. That is not correct. And next time, Aisha, in the Labour Party, somebody says something that is incorrect, and somebody says something that is absolutely wrong, and I hope and I will look forward to you absolutely cutting them out of public life forever.
Yeah.
Full stop. Okay.
All right, I'm just going to say, can I...
Also, he's not being cut out of public life. He can still do business. He can still be a multi-millionaire. That's like, I mean, I would argue he should have his property taken and redistributed according to need. But regardless, generally speaking, no one is saying that he should have all of that removed from him.
No.
What we're saying is that you shouldn't take money from him because that's, tacitly endorsing horrific racism and violence, which is the thing you're supposedly against and have been warning for the last month is the biggest crisis in history or whatever. Come on.
Pink shirt on.
Thank you. Yes. It's as abhorrent as what Frank Hester said. about Diane Abbott. It's part of a pattern of people connected to the Conservative Party, because there were the comments by Suella Braverman, many comments by Suella Braverman, actually. And then what happened with Liz Truss and Steve Bannon, Robert Jenrick and others. So we're getting this from the government about counter-extremism, but the government has so many of its own problems with its own senior figures.
And just a little bit further along with, yes, you've also got glasses on, yeah.
Yes, so when you say second chances, like how far is too far when you talk about second chances? Like how much money do you keep taking from these people who are horrible, but like they can't even say if they're apologising or not for the right thing? They're sort of caught in this sort of trap. Like how far is too far? What's the limit?
Of unacceptability, this is what you're saying. And just, let's go to the man next to you as well. You've got your hand up.
I'm just wondering if the cheque will come out tomorrow, or the helicopter keys, or the Tories say no.
Might as well answer that.
Yeah, see, that guy gave
Would you take
Richardson
more
like a private helicopter ride.
You did. He literally did.
I mean, we had the Kevin Hollinrake saying last night, yes, possibly.
I've already talked about that. But the fundamental point is, and I understand, and as I say, it is wrong and it was racist. And the question is, when these things happen, whether today in my party, tomorrow in another, the day after in my party again, we all want it not to happen, but when it does, what do we do as a society? What do we do as a community? And I absolutely accept the point that is being made by a number of people in the audience, but the question is, what do we do about it long term? And do we say the second chance?
You don't allow people like that into your political party? Would be one way of stopping that. Like, a punishment of bad deeds is probably a good thing in the long run, I would argue, because it gives everyone else the indication that you shouldn't behave like that because there will be negative repercussions for you. Maybe. Or am I having to explain it like a 5-year-old?
Work.
Well, I think the solution was provided to you very eloquently by an audience member who said we should listen to what Diane Abbott has to say in this regard. And I don't know if anyone else sitting in this room right now was furious on Wednesday at the fact that the Westminster establishment stopped Diane Abbott from being able to question the Prime Minister.
You mean the Speaker of the House when you say the Westminster establishment?
It's incredible, isn't it? The political party who is going to defend Diane Abbott, who's going to vociferously take her corner on this and advocate for her personal interests, it's not even the Labour Party. It's the Scottish National Party. It's a London MP, and she's being defended more vociferously by the SNP than she is from her own party,
And
she's still a member of.
Exactly, yeah. Exactly. And it's always a kind of lovely thing when the SNP are arguing for the right of a member of Parliament from a country they don't see as legitimate in a Parliament they don't want to be in to be able to speak. Honestly, I will miss the SNP when they inevitably leave, because let's be honest, Scotland ain't fucking staying. Why would they?
Can I just make one other
Very briefly, because I want to move on.
At the heart of all of this, with all the politicking going on, is a woman, and that woman is Diane Abbott.
Slay queen.
I think what we forget is she is a human being like the rest of us. This woman was our first ever black elected woman into Parliament. In that time, she has been abused, humiliated, mocked, and now she's been threatened with death. So in the middle of all of this, yes, there's lots of accusations, but there is a human being at the heart of all of this, and her name is Diane Abbott.
Okay.
Yeah. Remember when she was criticising for drinking on a train?
A mojito moment.
Yeah, she had a mojito. And it wasn't like she was absolutely off her face. She had a drink after work, and she was just sat there on her own reading a book on a train. Like that she got criticised for that.
Absolutely. Although the thing is, as well, on top of that, is that she's still known for that one time where she didn't quite get her sums correct. Yet Laura Trott has been caught multiple times getting the numbers wrong, failing Grayling. Remember the ferries from a company that he ordered that had no fucking ferries. How many moments these things have to happen? And yet the only person who's synonymous with not being erudite in extolling their own personal policy, it's always Diane Abbott who gets caught up. I wonder why. It's quite interesting how Grayling and Trott don't get the same treatment.
No, look, clearly it's a black and white issue. It's a black and white issue in that it's got nothing to do with people being black or white. Obviously, clearly.
Hey there, if you enjoyed the video, make sure that you like and leave a comment. That helps the video out in the algorithm. If you subscribe and ring the bell, it'll let you know when I go live. I stream every day on YouTube and Twitch. You can also follow all of my socials down in the description. And if you want to support me in a more financial manner, there's a join button for membership to just 99p to be a member on YouTube, as well as a Patreon, and there's some merch there as well. And hopefully I'll catch you on the next video. Take care.